Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with a family of seekers, and we are reading through the Bhagavad-gītā verse by verse, and this text is transforming us together. This is, I tell you guys sometimes, this is like my favorite service that I do right now. And I do a lot of service. I'm fortunate enough to do a lot of service, and this is my favorite because it brings us back to this ancient wisdom text that is so relevant even today. And when we meet, like this twice a week, these things we talk about, they stick with me. And I feel that they're starting to kind of like rewire my brain and really transform my heart. So really, I tell you guys this all the time, but I really appreciate you just doing this journey together. And today we're in text 10 today, and we're starting kind of a new section of, or text 10, chapter 10. We're starting kind of a new section of chapter 10 because we just finished these four like nutshell verses of the Gita, like these four verses that are essentially the essence of the Gita. And now we're getting to a section where Arjuna's going to speak, and he's gonna kind of share his realizations. So it's a little bit of a shift where we're getting to today. But let's just get right into it. Stella, do you want to say our prayers for us?
Sure. Om Jnanatimandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Śrīla Prabhupāda ki jai.
Jai. Thank you so much. All right, let's get right into it. We're going to start with chapter 10, text 12 and 13. And I will share my screen here. And when you're ready, Stella, if you want to read the Sanskrit or if you just want to go straight to the
I
translation, either
I
way.
think straight to the translation.
All right.
It's pretty long. It's like 3 verses or 2 verses. Oh, oh. Kalachandji wants me to read the Sanskrit. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Sasvatam Divyam, Adidevam Ajam Vibhum, Ahustvam Rasya Sarve Devashir Naradastata Asito Devalo Vyasaha Svayam Cheva Bravisime. Arjuna said, "You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages, such as Narada, Ashita, Devala, and Vyasa, confirm this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me."
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Kalachandji. Beautiful. You did a good job with the Sanskrit too. Very nice. So if this is your first time here, we're very open here. So if you have something to share, a reflection, a question, feel free to just raise your hand anytime. We part of the fun in this is that these are really more discussions and not so like like a lecture. So feel free to do that. All right. So this verse, again, this we're kind of at a little bit of a turning point here. We're moving on to this next section because up until now, Krishna's been speaking. He's been explaining who he is, the source of everything, the maintainer of everything, the intelligence behind everything. And now Arjuna's responding. And he's responding, he says, you're the supreme personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth, the eternal original person. And he's not flat. This isn't like flattery. This is realization. Because sometimes, when two friends are talking and one of them says something impressive, the other might say like, "Hey, you're the greatest speaker in the world," and it's just kind of like affectionate exaggeration. But that's not what's happening here. It's not friendly banter. This is Arjuna just really sharing his realizations. And Krishna's teachings have changed him. Krishna's teachings have changed him. So he says, you're the ultimate abode. Arjuna calls Krishna the ultimate abode, which is such a powerful phrase because we all have an abode for our hopes. We pin our peace on a relationship, on a career plan, on a version of ourselves, on a future outcome. And we treat those things like shelter. They become our shelters. But the problem is they're very fragile shelters. They can shift, and they will shift. They can disappoint. They'll change. This is just the nature of the temporary material energy. And when we pin our hopes in the temporary material energy, this will always be the outcome. So Arjuna is saying, you are the only shelter that doesn't collapse. Krishna isn't just maintaining everything, but he's the very resting place for the heart's deepest longing. And we just let that sink in for a moment, like what that really means in our lives. I think this realization in spiritual life this alone can completely transform your entire life. When you're on like the monkey bars of material existence, just going from one high to the next high, one sense of security to the next sense of security. And in the meantime, we're just like in so much anxiety that if our hands fall off this jungle gym, we're gonna just like seep into lava. That's what material existence is really. But when we learn that it's Krishna's, Krishna's actually the resting place for my heart's deepest longing. Krishna is my shelter. Krishna is really my only real security. When we really realize that, it's like we can just like happily walk on top of the jungle gym with like no fear of falling because Krishna has us. It's really paradigm shifting in our lives. And then what happens is everything kind of becomes like peaceful. Like stable and peaceful. Like we may switch jobs, but we know, okay, Krishna has a greater plan for me. I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry my fingers are going to slip and I'm going to get burnt. No, Krishna has a deeper plan for me. And we can just peruse through life in that way. And then Arjuna calls Krishna the purest. The purest. So this means that he's untouched by the modes of material nature. We know the modes of material nature: goodness, passion, ignorance. Even goodness, Krishna's untouched by. We are constantly influenced. We're constantly influenced by the modes, by conditioning, by past experiences. Krishna isn't. Okay? He's not reacting. He's not evolving. He's not contaminated. This in itself is like pretty inconceivable. You know? So Arjuna's recognizing that this form standing before him on the battlefield, this is a conversation that two friends are having on a battlefield, that this person standing before him is not temporary. It is eternal and is transcendental. That's a big statement. You know, he's declaring Krishna to be the absolute truth, the supreme Brahman. And this leads to another point. You know, sometimes people will say, you know, is the Gita polytheistic? Like, do Hindus believe in many gods? And so I get that a lot when people are like, oh, you're a Hindu, which I don't really know that I identify as a Hindu, but when people hear, you know, what you're following, that's a question they'll ask, you know, Hindus have lots of gods, right? And it's a fair question. It's a fair question. But we see here, even in how Arjuna responds after hearing Krishna's teachings, you know, the answers become very clear. You know, after hearing the essence of the Gita, Arjuna doesn't say, you're one important God among many. He says, you are the supreme. You are the absolute truth. You know, even the other gods don't fully understand you. So that's our answer right here. It's right here, plain in the Gita. This is strong. You know, Krishna's not competing with other gods for our attention. He's the source. And the others are not rivals. They're servants, you know, within his arrangements. I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit, the role of the demigods. You know, they manage different aspects of the universe. But they're not independent. They operate under Krishna. And so Bhakti teaches us, you know, that we focus our devotion on Krishna, not because we disrespect the other gods, but because we understand the bigger picture. And in that, we don't split our devotion. We understand that the demigods help facilitate our devotion. They help us serve Krishna, and that can even be our prayer to them. You know, please help me to serve Krishna more sincerely. So the Gita is very clear. Krishna is the highest reality, the ultimate source. You know, the others exist within that structure. So why believe this? You know, why believe this? Arjuna doesn't say, I feel this, you know, in this declaration. He doesn't say, this is true because this is what I feel. You know, no, he says the great sages all confirm it. So here there's this scriptural authority, you know, there's tradition, there's lineage. And now Krishna himself is declaring it. So Arjuna's conviction is built on two things, and this is important. Okay, these two things that Arjuna's conviction is built on: scriptural evidence and personal realization. Okay? And both things matter. Both things matter. Scriptural evidence and personal experience. There's a story that I heard that I really appreciate about Śrīla Prabhupāda. He was on a morning walk, and he asked his disciples, you know, why do you consider Krishna to be God? Why do you consider Krishna to be God? And the devotees begin giving, you know, some standard answers. You know, the great acharyas have accepted him. He possesses the six opulences in full. You know, he's supremely attractive. So Krishna means, you know, he has a sweetness that is uniquely special. You know, and these things are all true. But then Prabhupada said, when we chant Hare Krishna, we experience ecstasy. You know, that this is why Krishna is God. And the devotees were kind of surprised. You know, this is like a very experiential response. But then on another morning walk with different devotees, one of the devotees on this morning walk was on the other one as well. Prabhupada asked the same question. You know, why is Krishna God? And that devotee kind of waited a little bit. You know, the one that was on the walk before, and then he kind of like, you know, confidently replied, because when we chant Hare Krishna, we experience ecstasy. You know, and Prabhupada immediately responded, your ecstasy is illusion. Don't believe it. And everyone was like stunned, you know. And then he clarified, it is because the Bhagavad-gītā declares that he is God. That is why we accept him as God. So what he's doing here, you know, is teaching something that's very subtle and important. spiritual conviction isn't built only on experience. And it's also isn't built only on scripture, but both are necessary. And this is something I love so much about the bhakti path is that it gives us this process to try on, to try on in our lives and experience the transformation firsthand. And in that way, we build faith. We build more faith in the scriptures, and then the scriptures become a little bit more digestible for us. But this is the point here that both are necessary. Because the scripture, it gives us the stable foundation, something objective, something enduring, something beyond our shifting moods. But personal experience just really deepens that foundation. But experience alone can mislead us. We have to be careful about that. Emotions can rise and fall. Right? Psychological highs, they can feel spiritually super high, but then fade quickly. We've all experienced this too. When you hear people say like, "Oh, I just felt it in my heart. I just felt it in my heart." It's like, well, if you're not very purified, what you felt in your heart is probably your conditioning. Because this is just the nature of this mind-body package that we have. It's subject to the modes. And if we're not spiritually purified, we're likely hearing our conditioning. And that's okay, but just recognize that this is a thing. This is a thing. It's not until we really commit ourselves to this practice, and we become purified that we actually can hear God in the heart more clearly and more often. And until then, it can be kind of confusing sometimes when we hear voices, right? When we hear those subtle whispers. Right? So both are important. Scripture and personal experiences. Right? And at the same time, oh, Stella, yes, please share.
I was just thinking too, it's other devotees. Like when I see like your Gurudev, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, and I think, wow, he, it's like realized in that person, or my own Guru Maharaj, it's realized in that person. That adds confidence to my feeling.
Yes. Yeah, and that's said in this verse. He says great sages like Narada, he lists some great sages. So that's how disciplic succession, that's how it works. That's how this knowledge is passed down from one realized soul to another. So yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. So real depth comes when these two things meet. This scriptural knowledge and lived experience. And scripture gives us this something to stand on. The truth, it doesn't fluctuate with our moods. So this is where real knowledge, real spiritual depth happens when knowledge and practice meet. And scripture tells us who Krishna is. Tells us who Krishna is. But bhakti practice, chanting, serving, remembering, gradually reshapes the heart. And over time, that inner change becomes tangible. Not just as a dramatic emotional spike, but as something that's steady. Clarity increases, attachments loosen, peace deepens. If these things are happening to you in your practice, that's the process working on you. Right? That's the process working on you. That's you hooking up directly to Krishna's mercy. That's just flowing. When we start to experience these things, clarity, loosens attachments that are loosened, peace that is deepened. So this lived transformation strengthens our faith, right? And not because we chased a feeling, but because we followed a process. So this is when the interchange really starts to happen. So this is really the essential conclusion of the Gita. Okay, Krishna is not just a wise teacher, he's the supreme truth. And in the next verse, Arjuna will make that even clearer. And the conversation will just keep getting more and more profound. So should we move to the next verse? Do you guys have any other reflections or shares?
Yeah, if I could, Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Hare
I
Krishna.
love these points that you're making. And it made me think of a couple sort of consequences of that. One is that for if when one's faith is lagging, or for a new person, it's not required, like one doesn't have to have, if one can't yet trust Krishna or is not there yet, it's a trust of the process. And that just seems very important to me, that the process is always there. And it's there whether you're new, whether you're old, for everyone. And it allows us access to Krishna. But a process is something I think that anyone can learn to trust,
Mm,
with experience, as you're saying. And then as we gain knowledge, that transforms that trust that we have. I think that's great. I also love that I've always wondered, thought about this, how it makes, like, belief is not the core necessity.
mm,
Um, and like Krishna is Krishna. If we believe it, great. If someone does not, okay. It doesn't make Krishna not Krishna. So it seems to me it's like, okay, the absolute truth, and this is, Arjuna is saying this, the truth is the truth, the absolute truth is the truth. The question is not whether we believe it, it's what do we want to do about it. Like,
mm.
how does that affect us? How does that change our hearts?
The process without belief.
Yeah, right. The process, one can enter into the process and belief will develop, or faith will develop. Anyway, and everything that you're saying just sort of to me leads to those thoughts. So thanks. That was great.
Well, it's amazing that you're saying this because this is actually where Arjuna goes next.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know that, if that's why you're even sharing this, or that's just naturally where what led to you, but we'll see. Let's do the next verse and we'll see this is
And
where Arjuna's
and
going.
if I could just throw in with that, I was not thinking of that, but what I was thinking was, like, this verse and many others made me really feel like, yeah, Arjuna's us. We're Arjuna. I'm Arjuna.
Mm.
Like, this was his reaction is my reaction, and it's one reason that he's such a powerful force and voice for us in the Gita, is that he's also our representative in a way. So thanks.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful realizations. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move to this next verse here. 14. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
Sarvametadritam manye yanman vadasi keshava nahite bhagavan yakatim vidurdeva nadanavaha. O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality.
Thank you. So here, this is exactly what Kalachandra is talking about. Arjuna is saying, Krishna, I accept everything you've told me. And what we should see here, this isn't the same as saying, I understand every detail. He's not saying, I figured you out. He's just saying, I accept it as truth. I accept this as truth. But he also says something very humble here at the same time. He says, I believe what you're telling me, and I also recognize that you're not easy to understand. So he's acknowledging these two things at once. I trust you, and even if I don't fully grasp you yet. And this is real maturity. This is real maturity. He understands that the supreme person isn't someone you can just neatly analyze and wrap your mind around. Like Krishna's personality, his nature, the way he reveals himself. He says, Arjuna says here, even the demigods don't fully understand him. So what to speak of Arjuna? So Arjuna isn't pretending to be spiritually advanced. He's saying, if there's something I don't understand yet, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It probably just means that I need more purification. I need more growth before I have that capacity to understand. And this is such an important point here. Sometimes when we hear something in scripture that feels difficult or confusing, our instinct is to immediately judge it. And it's like, that sounds off. I'm not going there. But Arjuna shows us this other way. We can suspend judgment, not blindly, but humbly. So we can accept it, and trust that our understanding will deepen over time. So this is real faith, not pretending to understand everything, but also not rejecting what we don't yet understand. And in that, we allow ourselves to grow into deeper understanding. And this is how the spiritual knowledge actually transforms us. We have whatever faith we have, we put that faith in sticking to the process, and we trust that the process will transform us over time, right? And that our capacity will open up as we become purified, right? As we become less attached to our temporary identities, less identified with our temporary identities, and more realized in our eternal identity. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this in terms of, I think I got like a math minor. Just it was like built into my degree. Had a nuclear engineering degree, and built into it was a math minor. And I was really good at math, like really good at math. And I took a college statistics class once. And I don't know if anybody's ever taken college statistics, but it is like just so not intuitive. I walked in there thinking like, oh, this will be super easy. Statistics, that makes perfect sense. No, it's like completely not intuitive. But, and in like my inability to like understand it right away, it wasn't that, I looked to the teacher and was like, you don't know this stuff. You're not teaching us right. It's like, no, the teacher probably knows, this is, I trust this institution. I probably believe what they're teaching me is true, but I'm just not there yet. And sometimes this is how we have to see some of these spiritual truths that just seem so far out that we just like can't comprehend, or we just can't relate. We have to understand that, the problem is maybe not that they're too far out or they're too unrelatable. It's that we're just maybe too conditioned. And our consciousness, our capacity to understand some of these truths is just not there. But that doesn't mean that we say, these things are not valid. Right? We can still accept them as truth, even if we don't quite understand them yet. And this is the difference here. And Prabhupada explains that, he likes to say that we can't just cherry pick the parts that we like and then ignore the rest. Because it's easy to say like, oh, I love the meditation parts, or I resonate with the compassion parts, or the non-attachment teachings, and these are all good things. But it can't be that when something challenges us, or when something confronts our ego or stretches our understanding, that we just like throw it out. Otherwise we're not really learning. We're just like curating. I heard this example of this Christian talk show where somebody said, like, I believe in Jesus, but I'm not part of any church because I haven't found one that agrees with my understanding of Jesus. Which is like kind of an interesting way to go about it. And I've actually heard like quite many people say something like this. It's like, I already have my diagnosis and I'm just looking for the doctor who agrees with it. But it's not the doctor who's supposed to adjust to the patient's diagnosis. Right? It's like it's the patient should consider that the doctor might understand something that they don't. And of course we need to be thoughtful and understand that not every teacher or institution interprets things properly. We still need to have this healthy discernment. But there's a difference between discernment and just making ourselves the final authority on truth. If I only accept teachings that already agree with me, then I'm not really growing. I'm just reinforcing my current mindset. So we have to understand this. The truth carries us. We don't carry truth. And that's part of the surrender process. And not that we just surrender to anything. And it takes a little bit of time even to decide, what path we're going to surrender to. And that's a process in itself. We try on the process, we grow in faith, and then there comes a time where we say, okay, I've seen enough here. I've seen enough transformation. I've tried on enough things that I'm ready to accept this. And then we have to understand that that's part of the journey, is that there'll be things that don't quite make sense right away, that we just can't totally get on board with. And that's okay, right? We suspend judgment and we keep going forward with the process, because that's the point of a process, like Kalachandji was saying. Yeah. What do you guys think? Nancy, please share with us.
Took me a while to figure out how to raise that hand. I just wanted to, words matter, right? And so I look up words just because I think it's very interesting to see what, I guess, the AI is thinking. But the definition here is acceptance is the act of voluntarily receiving, approving, and agreeing to something such as an offer, condition, or situation. It signifies constant approval or acknowledgement, often involving the recognition of reality without resistance. And I really like that acceptance of reality without resistance, and it being a voluntary act. And you express that so well. If I'm coming into a situation with my preconceived notions, that here's my judgment of what has to happen, I'm not voluntarily accepting anything. I'm just full of my ego and full of my own decision about what should be and what shouldn't be. And so I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to add that. And I also have to apologize. I just got a call that I have to return. So I'll be on for just a couple of minutes, but then I have to return call. Hare
Okay.
Krishna, thank you so much.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and this is what Krishna's, if the goal of the Gita is to lead us to this place of surrender, I mean, inherently we have to surrender to the path. We have to surrender that there's a greater knowledge out there than our own, and process out there than our own, that we follow. Right? That's just like by definition. So, yeah, thank you. And the Gita's explaining to us, that our core problem is this spiritual amnesia. We've forgotten who we really are. This is like the Gita's diagnosis of us. Okay? We've forgotten who we are. We're eternal souls. We've forgotten that our natural life is loving connection with God. And this very forgetfulness shapes everything. And this is Krishna's diagnosis. We're living disconnected from our true identity. And in that, we're living as if we're the center of everything, that we're the controller of everything, we're the maintainer of everything. And this is just such illusion. And we convince ourselves that that's even where we'll be happiest, right? When the reality is that's actually where we're in the most anxiety. We're not even the happiest in that. It's actually just full of anxiety and fear. Right? And so Krishna gives us a treatment, and this treatment is regular exposure to spiritual reminders. Hear about him, remember him, serve him, right? Just develop relationship with him. Develop relationship with him. And when we follow in Arjuna's footsteps, when we stop arguing and we start aligning, something shifts. We start to see through the worldly things that used to deceive us. We begin to recognize a deeper pattern behind what once felt random. And we start noticing that Krishna's hand is present even in situations that once felt chaotic. And when we regularly remember and serve him, then he reciprocates and he awakens something inside of us. It's this divine emotion, this deeper clarity, this steadiness. If anybody has experienced these things in your spiritual practice, this is not you. This is divine mercy coming to you. Right? And this divine mercy is attracted by our endeavor. When we consciously remember Krishna, serve him, right? Come to classes like this, talk about him in the association of devotees. Right? This attracts his mercy, and he awakens this inside of us. Right? This clarity, this steadiness. And this is a testament that the process is working. And this should help us to build faith. I mean, this does help us to build faith. That's why we keep coming back to these practices again and again, because our faith is deepening. And then as our faith deepens, we'll do more and more practices. And Krishna will reciprocate even more with us. And to the point where things become clear, we become purified. We start to really settle into our eternal identity. We start to live more from our eternal identity than our temporary identities. Right? Which translates directly to like kind of being less of a jerk, because we're less of like, this is the me world. Right? And we're more in the consciousness of the rightful consciousness of I'm a servant of God. Right? That's even my purpose here, is to serve God and to become closer with God. And wow, what a much more compassionate, loving person that makes us. Right? And then everything just starts to get better because we're living from that place that really is who we are anyway. We've just forgotten. What do you think, Aaron?
Well, I really like the story you shared about Prabhupada and the morning walks, but I'm also like just really thinking about this statement that that your ecstasy is an illusion, because I guess I'm just wondering, like, so when you feel that in, like, say in a kirtan or whenever, like, is should you not like just accept it as a connection to Krishna, or like should you be interrogating it, or like, and then also, like, does that statement also apply to like when you're feeling moments of clarity or moments of steadiness, like is it just the feeling of ecstasy that it can be an illusion, or is it any, I mean, obviously Maya's everywhere and everything, we're always under the mode. So yeah, I guess I'm just like feeling like unsure and like unstable of like, well, which emotion, which feeling can I trust, or like even like kind of like hold on to, like that was a really great experience, like I really felt Krishna, or is it like maybe, or maybe you're an illusion.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. And I'm glad that you kind of picked that up in the statement. And I think what we have to do is kind of like really just zoom out and understand what what Prabhupada was trying to, oh, my earphone just fell out. What Prabhupada was trying to teach us here. And that is that don't become just so convinced of your own independent experience that you start to lean into that more than what's backed by scripture. He's just trying to show how important the balance of both is. So some people will just like have an ecstatic experience and say this is like a spiritual awakening, and I feel, so awakened, and so, now I'm so in touch with myself and my body and my pleasure, and it's like, okay, you may have some kind of revelation there, but if it's not backed by scripture, then we can't just attribute it to whatever we want and then make our feelings the ultimate authority. So it's really just to kind of like make that point of how the balance of both is so important. Because if we don't have that scripture to give us that steady focus, then really we're just kind of making ourselves God. And I've seen this sometimes in like spiritualists. It's like they'll take things from the scriptures that feel good, and then the things that they don't really like, I've seen people go off the deep end with like this, with like pleasure. Like, oh, let's just, this pleasure is our temple and our God. And it's like, that's really not at all what the scriptures say. And that may be what you're experiencing and feeling in your body right now, but that's not what the scriptures are saying. And Prabhupada really wanted his disciples to have that firm backing because that's really how we make progress. When we plug into that disciplic succession and we're not just acting off of our own whimsical feelings or emotions, but that they're backed by scripture. And if your experience, Aaron, you're in a kirtan and you're feeling ecstasy, you can see that as Krishna's mercy because you're following the process backed by scripture. And it can be very tricky, if you're not, because you attribute it to like, oh, this is, divine intervention, but the fact is it's going to fall through at some point because it's not backed by scripture, and scripture is the only thing that is soundproof, that doesn't have these like holes. Our egos, our own conceptions, they're filled with holes. And at one point, it's going to seep through. Even if you feel like you might have it mastered now, the reality is you just don't if you're just riding off of your own conceptions because we're limited, we're finite. We know this, we experience this. The scriptures teach us this. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you for talking me back from the edge of like questioning every ecstatic kirtan I've been in.
Yeah, no. And if you're in this class right now and you're feeling like, wow, this is feeling so close to Krishna, and I know we all feel that together here, and that's real. And scripture tells us that's real. Devotees, get together in association, talk about Krishna. Krishna's present. We feel his presence. That's real. We should be ecstatic about that. But that's what we have to check. You can't just say any old emotion or any old feeling of ecstasy is God. It should be backed by scripture. So it's
Hmm.
both.
I feel like it's so like it does make a lot of sense, and it makes me think like this is why it's such a gradual process, because at least I think in many people's experience, and definitely in mine, there is so much emotion and like spiritual high at the beginning, and so little understanding for me of the scripture, and not even that much, right? Like association, like what Stella was saying, because you're new, you're just meeting everyone. Um, and it's interesting, like it makes sense that it must be gradual because you're not going to stay up here emotionally, and hopefully you're not going to stay down here with understanding of scripture either, like, but that understanding is not just going to like turn up to the exponential way that the emotions have. So like, yeah, it's just making me kind of see like why the timeline has to be gradual, and that like, I feel like I'm just starting to appreciate a little more like what I've been recently going through, which is like a lot of just like um struggling through questions, and like struggling through like, you know, a a purport or a piece of scripture that like triggers me or like doesn't jive with me, and I feel like I on one hand it's like I wish I didn't have this struggle. I wish I just like accepted it and just like, you know, could go to the ecstasy. But on the other hand, I feel like, oh no, it is like there's like mercy in this struggle, like that it is part of this necessary process, and like I can't get further until, you must go through, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. And Aaron, you're so sincere that it's like, I'd have no doubt, Krishna, like this lifetime for you is like exponential in your spiritual progress. Like you feel like it's so slow, but I see your sincerity, and it's like that's all you need. You don't even have to worry. You're just so sincere that Krishna will take you the rest of the way. And yeah, so I just say don't just keep being real because
Well, and
that's
I think like I have to get out of my own way, like, and stop thinking like it's about my progress or like what I do, and just realize that like what you just said, like Krishna will carry me. Bhakti is a gift. real, like just even trying to realize that, like how fortunate it is to be right here, right now.
Yeah. And that's Krishna's mercy. That's Krishna's mercy for all of us. And to the degree that we want that relationship with Krishna, and we're endeavoring in our lives in a very real way to fan that flame, Krishna will come and make it wildfire, you know? So that's the process. That's all that we have to do. Yeah. Thank you. I had experiences like this, when I first got into spiritual life. I was like convinced that, what I needed to do was quit my job and move to another city and own a yoga studio. And, I was just like so all in right away. This was just like my personality. And I realized pretty quickly in doing that, and I felt very strongly like this is Krishna's calling me. I realized pretty quickly, like, oh, wait, I'm really not ready for this. And this decision was probably more due to my own conditioning than really like Krishna telling me to do this. And that was evident by just how like unsteady and anxious I felt. Like I didn't have the surrender to Krishna and surrender in my life to be able to make a huge change like that and feel just like nothing. Like oh, this is just ecstasy. Like no, the reality was like I'd never lived in a city. My car was getting towed because I was parking places I shouldn't have been and I didn't know, and then I couldn't find my car, and then there's rats all over my small apartment. I don't have a job anymore to pay my like it just goes on, and I was just like freaking out. Right? So it's like, but then, Krishna came and sent me my husband and it helped me. So it's not that Krishna's not there in that moment, but sometimes we get a little bit so much into our own conditioning and we attribute it to Krishna, and it's like, and even my own guru at the time had told me, like, keep things the same, don't make a big change. Like, just like Stella said, this is Krishna talking to me. When people that are very realized in the scriptures, talk to us like this is the scriptures. And juxtapose that, when I went to quit my job again a few years later, and when I did that, I felt actually very like I could quit, I could stay, whatever serves Krishna the most. I'm really fine either way. So one, I felt like less pulled. It was very evident to me that it was like it wasn't me trying to drive. It was just like either way is fine. And then at that time, my guru said, "Yeah, this is a good idea for you to go ahead and leave." And if to me, it was just I could totally feel the difference between like being led by scripture and my own, emotion, my own experience versus just like following my conditioning and saying that I felt that in my, it's just like there's a difference. So that's why there's a process. That's why there's a process. That's why there's Guru Sadhu Shastra. That's why we have teachers in our lives to help us interpret the scriptures and guide us accordingly when we're just might not have that capacity yet. And that's why Gita tells us this, this is listen to our teachers. This is why we need a teacher. Thank you. Katie, sorry, I got off on tangent. I didn't see your hand. Please share.
No worries, no worries. And I hope I don't lose you because I'm near the place in the road where I might. So I'll try to come back if so. But yeah, thanks. This is all super helpful. And it was making me think, of just this morning, like the last few days I've been really anxious and like I was really upset. But I was sitting there trying to chant my rounds and like I started realizing like or just thinking like, I'm super upset, but Krishna is right here with me. And like it actually did right then. I could feeling better, and it was a nice mental moment too to think in my mind like I'm only feeling better because everything else is still the same and still very like up in the air and stuff. But I'm feeling better because Krishna is right here with me. And and it was nice to think like that's the reason, like the only reason and the reason. And it was just this morning. you know? So I love how these timings just like are so amazing. And it was making me think of another maybe example where like, you know, I was like, well, that's so weird. And then I thought, well, not maybe not, because the way, you know, Krishna put the verses in the perfect order, of course. So we're like being like pulled along like in a way that maybe kind of gets us ready for the next class was also coming to my mind. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you very much. Very cool.
Yeah, thank you. And this is so many of us realize this when you start coming into spiritual life. It's like everything is like divinely arranged for you. It's like, wow, this comes into my life just at the right time. These people, these verses, these, and you could say that like, okay, you're just seeing that. But the difference between when you're living in alignment with scriptures and with the process and when you're just seeing things is that eventually when you're just seeing things, things will fall out. Things will not align. Scriptures will never let you down. If the more you put your faith into scriptures, the more your life just aligns and you feel that alignment in the form of steadiness, clarity. But and when we do that in material energy, we may think we're riding a wave and we're there forever, but it will inevitably fall through. It just will. Yeah, what do you think, Stella?
Yeah, it was, sorry, it's not Stella. I wanted to say something to Erin, that Erin, your questions are one of our favorite parts of this class. And we really, I mean, there's we always hear them and it's like, oh yeah, what about that? And when we heard this verse, and Rhonda, when you started speaking about it, Stella and I both looked at each other and we said, Aaron, like we just felt like, oh yeah, that was really, Aaron, that was like for you.
Aaron's got a good question.
And we started looking forward to what we knew, like, where's Aaron? We were looking forward to what your question was going to be. So and then Radha, after that, we're like, all right, now how's Radha, what's she going to say about this? And we're looking forward to that. And we get so much out of both the questions and the responses. So I just really wanted to thank you, Aaron, for those questions. They mean a lot to us. And yeah, of course, they're for you and they answer your questions, but they're also, they're really valuable for us too. So thank you very much.
And I love Katie's total application too. But I had something Tamal Krishna Goswami told me about this kind of like ecstasy, and someone says, oh, that's back in the day they called it a shadow of Bhav, like it's a shadow feeling. Like, I was crying in the temple and, all that kind of stuff. And he was just like, he pulled me into the middle of the temple and just kind of said, keep it to yourself, like, because, but but that was Aaron's question, like, what about that ecstasy, And later he told me that it's a shadow of the incredible fullness of Bhav. So that when you turn toward the sun, and of course Krishna is the sun, but if you turn toward the sun of Krishna, he's standing there waiting for you. And if someone's standing in front of the sun, the first thing you approach is the shadow. So the shadow, he's there, but it's not the full body of like hugging him. You can't hug a shadow, but you're in the presence of the person. So when you feel that when he's told me, when you feel that ecstasy early in your progress, it's showing that you're getting close. You're actually, it's real, but it's a shadow. But the shadow wouldn't be there unless you had turned toward Krishna. And he's going to be there as the person whose shadow is being thrown on you. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. Really nice. Thank you.
It's a weird thing, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Thank you. Yeah. So just to kind of wrap this up, back to, Arjuna's statements here. Arjuna's statements are really reflecting the heart of the Gita. Krishna is the absolute truth, and devotional service to him is the means of realizing that truth. Not by reshaping him into what we prefer, not by reducing him to something easier, but by approaching him with humility, trust, and a willingness to grow. And we see this in Arjuna. He's no longer arguing, he's no longer doubting, but he's also not just blindly following. He's heard, he's reflected, and now he's saying, I accept. I accept. And this acceptance, it's not the end of inquiry, but it's just the beginning of this deeper realization. And that's what this verse is teaching us. So thank you all for being here. As always, love spending my Mondays and Thursdays with you. And yeah, I'll see you all on Thursday. Also I do want to just put a shout out there. There is talk. I am thinking of leading a pilgrimage in January 2027. That's what's being talked about right now. If
Who is
you
Renu?
want to join us, I think I'll do it, and with my friend Anuradha. She lives in New Vrindavan. Yeah, and we'll have a kirtan star too. We'll probably announce that soon. But this is and what I'm thinking Jaipur, Rishikesh, Hardwar, Govardhan Eco Village for the flower festival, and then an optional add-on to to Vrindavan.
That
Yeah,
is
so
next
that'll be
January?
the optional add-on. Yeah, late January, early February. Yes. So if you think you might be interested in that, give me a text, shoot me a text, and I'll keep you in mind. Okay, my friends, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you on Monday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hey, Krishna.